everyone, how you doing? Is all right. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to look at the squad and value them. What we mean by value is how much are the Newcastle players in the squad, how much are they worth if we were to sell them. Now, when you value a player, you talk about form, you look at how long they've got left on the contract, how much are they involved in playing, are they regulars, are they not, and so on and so on. So we're going to be looking through that today, something a little bit different. As you know, news with Newcastle is a little bit quiet, but let's crack on. Let's begin with the goalkeepers. Let's begin with Karl Darlow. So Darlow's now 27. He's got 2 years left on his deal. Last season he played 12 games. Obviously, he dispatched Rob Elliott when Elliott was having a little bit of dip in form. He come in. I think with Darlow, he's eligible to play for Wales for his granddad. Maybe that'll give him a higher profile. I guess some aspects you can look at people's profiles and that also determines the value as well. But if someone was to come in and say he has a bid for Karl Darlow, I think Karl Darlow, because he's not a regular, I would probably say he's probably worth the value of 3 million for me. Let me know what you want. Play along in the comments box down there below. Martin Dubrovka, who we are still waiting to sign. He's 29. He's got 2 years left on his deal over in the Czech Republic. Played 12 games for us. Absolutely fantastic. First choice international for his home country. It's alleged that it's going to be a £4 million buy, but I don't think he's worth it. I think he's worth a hell of a lot more. I think Martin Dubrovka is 10 million plus. I think if Dubrovka had 5 years in the Premier League and he was selling to another Premier League club, he would go for over 10 million without a shadow of doubt. So I think Dubrovka is worth a minimum of 10 million. Moving to Rob Elliott, he's now 32. He's starting to get on. Still got 2 years left on his contract. Played 16 games last season until a dip of form and loss of injury. He's in the Irish squad often when he is fit. I think he's on the same kind of level, despite being 5 years older than Karl Darlow. I think Rob Elliott's worth around 3 million. You're starting to get on. He's not first choice. He's actually technically third choice at the moment because Darlow's been on the bench. Freddy Woodman, who's 21. He's still got another couple of years left on his contract as well. He played a total of just the one game for us, which was in the FA Cup. Of course, he's been out on loan. He's now in England under 21 international. He's last season he moved up a level. I think with Woodman, I think he's only worth around 2 million, but that's not a be negative towards him. He's so far down the pecking order. But I think if you ask me this question in 5 years' time, if Freddy Woodman's still at Newcastle, he'll be worth double figures, be 10 million plus. I just think because he's not getting much game time, he's young, he's under 21. But I'm not saying get rid of him. By all means, no. I just think his value's worth around 2 million. And Matt Sells, who we expect him to leave very shortly, he's 26. He's still got 3 years left on his contract, So if we don't sell him, he's going to be stuck here for another 3 years. Played 37 games out on loan at Anderlecht last season in the Belgium squad often. He's called up to every single Belgium squad now, yet to make a cap though. But I think Sells is probably around or worth 4 million. He's got a bigger, higher profile in Belgium than he does in England. But if you were to sell Matt Sells, if someone said there's 4 million, I think most Newcastle fans would accept that. Moving across to John Yedlin, the right back. He's almost 25 now. Still got a big year, 3 years left on his contract. Regular for the USA, he's got well over 50 caps. He's a regular, he starts every game. Played 34 games, he's our first choice. I think his value is much higher than what it was when we first bought him. I think DeAndre Edlin for me is worth about 8 million. Fantastically going forward, great for the Premier League. Defensively, looking what's behind him runners wise, he struggles a little bit, in particular the ball over the top because he's so far in advance. But I think Yedlin, if someone was to come in for a bid, I think the minimum Newcastle will have to ask for is 8 million. His understudy, if you want to call it that, Javi Manquillo, who's got 2 years left on his deal, played 23 games last season for us at right back and left back. I don't think he's worth much if we were to sell him. He's got 2 years left on his deal. I think a couple of million. I think 2 million would be enough if the price was right. 2 million, I think that'll be enough to persuade Rafa, if we had cover already, to accept 2 million for Javi Manquillo. Here's Escamas, who's very shortly to be a free agent, 33. Played 3 games for us last year. Absolutely fantastic against Swansea in that 1-0 away win. I just don't think he's worth anything. Of course he isn't. He's a free agent. He's worth 3. If he had a couple of years on his contract, maybe get $500,000 or $1 million, but he's free, his value. The captain, Jamal Lascelles, now 24. Rumoured to be, possibly James Tarkowski's replacement on that standby list if Southgate wants to get one, or maybe next in line if there's another injury in the World Cup for the defenders. A massive 5 year left on his contract. Remember, people are already forgetting he signed a contract recently. Still got 5 years left to run on that. 35 games. He's a threat for set pieces. 3 goals. He's our captain. It would be massive bid. Huge bid. English talent. goes for massive money now because there's not many of them left and you've got to fill your squad. I think Jamal Lascelles has to be a minimum valued of 40 million. And you might say that I'm over-exaggerating. I just don't. I don't think there's many English centre-backs out there who are performing like he did last year. 5 year on his contract and the captain. It'll be massive, massive money to get Jamal Lascelles away from the club. Florian Lejeune, 27, had a great partnership with Jamal Lascelles. You know, he's still got another 4 year left on his contract. Struggled at first, you know, he was injured with Harry Kane, come back, had a dip of form, but the second half of the season went on to impress. I think if someone was to come in, he played 24 games with Florian Lejeune. I think his prices went up a little bit. I think you've got to probably look at asking a minimum of 12 million for Florian Lejeune. I think he's been really impressive. The jury's still out. Can he go on next season and do that? If he can, that'll obviously shoot up in price without a shadow of a doubt. Kieran Clark, who's now coming towards to be one of the most experienced players in the squad, he's 28, still has a massive 3 year left on his contract, played 22 games, obviously with the form of Lejeune and Lascelles. He dropped to the bench, suffered an injury towards the end of the season, got us 2 goals, regular for the Ireland squad, starts week in. Well, I say week in, week out, it's not, but you know what I mean. He starts every game for Ireland. I think about 5 million is probably Kieran Clark's value because of his age. He's not massive high profile. He's third choice centre back. But he'd had a great season in the Championship for us, but I think 5 million is enough for him. Chancellor Mbemba, 23-year-old, massive speculation with him at the moment. He's still got 2 years left on his contract. I think because he's not playing much football, I think it is the right time to cash in for him and for the sake of his own career. Only played 11 games last season. Some of them were out at left back. He's a regular for the DR Congo, plays in centre midfield. He's good on the ball. I think his value is higher because Newcastle know that they have a player who's a lot of clubs are asking for. Again, a big profile in Belgium, and because he's young, 23, 2 year left on his contract, I still feel that his value's been devalued from when we first bought him, but I still think Newcastle can get 7 million if the price was to come in. That's a minimum I'm asking for. Paul Dummett, left back, 26-year-old, again signed a contract recently. He's still got another 4 year left on that. 21 games this season, a former Welsh international, only the 2 caps and friendlies, which actually means he's still eligible to play for England. And he's a local lad. How much does Paul Dummett, if the bid was to come in? I think about 5 million would be right. He doesn't have a massive profile because he's seen as this underdog, and I think that's probably hindering his value, but I think Dummett is valued around 5 million in my eyes. Macedo Hadara, who's now going to be a free agent, still 25, still relatively young, you know. Only played the 2 games last season, and because he's a free agent, he has no value. If he had 4 or 5 years left on his contract, maybe 3 million perhaps, but because he's a free agent, fortunately has no value. Moving across to midfield, Matt Ricci, who's now, again, similar to Kieran Clark, is going to be one of the most experienced players in the squad. We know he does a lot of running. He's 28 now, he played 38 games last year, scoring 3 goals, had a dip in form the first half, improved in the second half, like the majority of all the Toon squad. I think Ricci with 3 years left on his contract, and people know what they're going to get. I think probably around 10 million would be right for him. I know we bought him for 12 million. Has he gone on and gone past that in terms of value? No. We know that he's a Scotland international. He's in the squad regularly. But I think 10 million would be just about right for a 28-year-old who doesn't chip in with loads of goals. I think that's a good asking price. I mean, I'm not wanting to sell these players, by the way, if anyone's wondering. We're just doing a value on the report. Jacob Murphy, who's still relatively young, 23. Mark, who's on the Facebook page, is a fan of him. He says, give him time. Still got 3 years left on his contract. Played a lot of games, believe it or not. I know a lot of them from the sub. Scored the 1 goal, a great goal against Man City. Played 28 games. I think his value has decreased because he's not a regular. You know, we bought him for 12 million, but I think he's probably around 7 million for Jacob Murphy because he's not a regular. He's not starting week in, week out. Hasn't shown a consistency. Yes, he did in January for about a month, but that's probably it. 7 million for Murphy. Mikel Merino, who almost is 22. You know, he's a regular for the Spain under-21s. Massive speculation with Bilbao and Betis from loads of publications over in Spain. Still got 4 years left on his contract. Remember, we only permanently signed him, what was it, late September, October time. You know, you impressed when he first come in, had a back injury, never really couldn't dismantle Shelvey and Diarra in that midfield, but I still think that you can still command a quite a nice fee. I think 8 million. If he was down the pecking order and someone went, there's 8 million, I think that'll be quite tempting for us to sell that. But because we're lack of quality midfield, he's got to stay. Isaac Hayden, 23, still relatively young, still got 3 years left on his contract. Played 29 games, which surprised me a little bit because that second half of the season, he was more used as a substitute for the last 5 to 10 minutes. Scored a great goal against Southampton in that 2-2 draw. I think his value isn't massive. He's another one who's a quiet lad, doesn't really dominate a game as such, low profile. I think Isaac Hayden's probably worth a value of around 3 million. John Joe Shelvey, you know, there is talk, should he be in that England squad? Of course, all the Toon fans are going to say yes to that. 26-year-old, still got 3 years left on his contract. Our highest earner at 80 grand a week. Played 32 games, scoring 2 goals, one in the league, one in the FA Cup. For me, he's got to score more goals, but the things that he can do as a former England international, should be in the England side, the things that he can do, he makes us tick. And I genuinely feel that Shelvey's worth at least a minimum of 15 million. I think that has to be put on his price tag in case the likes of West Ham come calling for him again. 15 million minimum upwards for me for John Joe Shelvey. Mo Diame, who's nearly 31. You know, he's retired from Senegal. I'm surprised Senegal haven't convinced him to go to the World Cup and come out of retirement just for the tournament. Just the 1 year left on his contract. That's all he's got. Would you offer him a new deal? I think I would. 33 games, the 2 goals. You know, I think his values, because he's only got a year left and he's 31, it's probably around about 4 million. But, you know, if he was a lot younger at 25, his would seriously jump between 15 and 20. I'm being serious because he's had an absolutely phenomenal second half of the season. But because the contract's running down, he's almost 31, 4 million will probably be enough to sell him if, again, we have quality midfielders, but we don't have that in the minute. Henri Saivet, who, you know, he played 4 games, scored the great free kick against West Ham before he went out on loan over in Turkey to Sivasspor. You know, Saivet still got 3 years left on his contract, man. If he doesn't play many games, he's sitting on a good wage there. But I think he's in and out the Senegalese squad, hasn't been picked for their World Cup. I think if someone came in for a low price, I don't think he's worth much. I think 2 million will probably be enough to get Saivet off our books, I really do. Jack Colback, who hasn't played any games for Newcastle this year. You know, he had an absolutely phenomenal second half of the season with Nottingham Forest. They really like him. They're keen on taking him. Only got 1 year left on his contract. 28-year-old, not under Rafa's plans. I think about £1 million will be enough to get Jack Colback out of the club if we do sell him. And we should be getting rid of him this summer, hopefully. Or at least get him out on loan for the rest of the season. And then really he's left the club if that was to happen. Christian Atsu, you know, had a great start the season. Dropped, well, he wasn't dropped, he was moved out of the side because of Kennedy's form. Still 26-year-old, 3 year left on his contract, 29 games, scoring the 2 goals. Regular for Ghana, starts the majority of their games. I think Atsu's probably in that bracket of where do you place him? Do you put him 10? Do you put him 5? I think I would rate Christian Atsu because he's hit and miss, isn't he? He's not consistent enough for me to demand a high figure. I think about 6 million is around Christian Atsu's form for me. Guide, sorry. Kennedy, who isn't really our player, but I think he's worth, about a minimum of 15 million. And I think that's not going to help Newcastle in one sense because he's been phenomenal since he's come in on loan. Still got 2 years left at Chelsea on his contract. Still 22-year-old. Played the 12 games, scored 2 goals against Southampton for us. I think because he's had this great second half of that loan spell, that's made his value push up. I think if he didn't have a great second half of that season with us, I think his value would probably be about what Atsu is, 6-7 million, because he's basically a fringe player. But Chelsea now know that there's clubs across Europe looking at him. We're one of them, and there is talk of Leipzig and some other Bundesliga sides as well. Rolando Aarons, who had the second half of the season out at Hellas Verona and Serie A, 22-year-old, still a young lad, still got 3 years left on his contract. Just the 5 games, scored the 1 goal, and that was a great goal against Nottingham Forest in the League Cup. Because Aarons' profile isn't massive and he's down the pecking order in Newcastle at the moment, I think about 3 million is what he's valued at the moment. I know he's English, and English players should be valued a lot more just because he's so far down the pecking order. Let's be honest, is a Premier League club going to come in and buy Rolando Aarons at this present moment? I don't think so. Ashraf Lazar, you know, the guy who loves to take selfies constantly on Instagram, 26-year-old, had a nightmare in Serie A. He went to Benevento, started off really well, scored a goal for them as well, but completely lost form, lost injury, and then they brought in Bakary Sagna and he didn't play at all in the second half of the season. But just the 1 game for us in the League Cup this year. Former Moroccan international, you know what it is, although despite he's still got 3 years left on his contract, I think a bid of about 1 million would really test Rafa Benitez if we've got cover at left back and left midfield. I really do. I don't think he's worth it. Jose Perez, Now, this is an interesting one. Still only 24, 3-year left on his contract. 37 games, the 10 goals, works tirelessly off the ball in that number 10 position. That's, I think, the number 10, with the system that we play under Rafa, is the hardest position to play. I generally think, and some of you are going to laugh at this, I think Ayoze Perez is worth about 25 million. Not because he's absolutely world class, because other clubs, and even other fans, we've seen Chelsea and Spurs fans trying to come on and rate Ayoze Perez. I'm like, really? Ayoze Perez? Because he could do a bit of everything. He's still young. He plays as a striker, number 10, out on the left. And he works tirelessly hard. You know what you're going to get. Chipped in with double figures. It's his best season. I think because he's Spanish and he's young, he would command a massive fee. And he's got a bigger reputation. There is this link that comes around with Barcelona a week, year in, year out. I think 25 million is his value. I really, really do. I think he's had a great second half of the season where he's just plummeted that way. The only way he can come down is that way. But he's got to kick on next season. Slimani, he's nearly 30. He's a regular for Algeria, for their squads. 3 year left on his contract at Leicester. What's going to happen there? He played the 4 games for us, no goals, injured, and got a red card. Well, he didn't get a red card. He got a red card by the FA after he kicked out with Dawson later on. I still think his value is high because Leicester want to recuperate. I think that's the only reason why it's going to push him high. Big reputation across Western Europe. I think he's probably valued about 15 million at Leicester. Would I pay that? No, I'm against that. I would not pay 15 million for Slimani. Dwight Gale, 27 now. He's starting to come in them to be one of the most experienced guys. Still got 3 years left on his contract. Played 38 games, scoring 6 goals. I think he's had a poor season. There was talk earlier on the start of the season that he could go to Fulham for 15 million. I think his value's decreased massively because he's had a poor campaign. I think about 9 million is worth of what Dwight Gale is because he's English. Let's not forget that pumps up the value. Still got 3 years left on his contract, and he'll still score 5 to 10 goals in the Premier League wherever he's at. I'm pretty confident of that, but I think his value's decreased to what it used to be. I know we bought him for 10 million. Joselu, 28. Again, he's another one of the most experienced players in the squad. 2 years left on his deal. Just the 4 goals from 32 games. I don't think his value is great. We bought him for 5 million. I think it's actually gone down a little bit. Someone wants to come in with a bid for 4 million and we've got cover up front. I'd be pretty tempted to sell him for 4 million. And finally, Alexander Mitrovic, who causes debate whichever side of the fence to sit on. Still 23. Still really young. 2 years left on his contract. Played the 7 games for us this year, scoring the 2 goals. One against West Ham, I remember. Absolutely fantastic at Fulham. Blitzed their league. Serbia, regular. He'll go on to the World Cup. If he has a good World Cup, his increase could absolutely rocket. It really could. Look what happened to Sissoko. I think if we were to sell Mitrovic right now, I think a bid of around 17 million would really test Rafa Benitez, regardless of how many strikers we've got, because I don't think he rates him. If he goes on, if Newcastle could hang on, wait until what happens in the World Cup, his increase could go over 25 million, and I'm being serious about it. I think it could hit 30 potentially. Look at Sissoko. Let me know what you think. How do you value the lads in the comments box down there below? Copy and paste the list, which is in the top pinned comment, and value the lads throughout the season. Remember, it's the form or the regulars, how old are they, and how long they got left on the contract as well. Thanks for watching. See you later. I know it's a long one. Ta-da. Bye-bye.